Hi there, my name is Craig. I've got a 02 Ford F250 here. It's got the diesel, and about 18 months ago I needed a work truck, just a cheap one, to kind of get me going for back on the road, pull a trailer and work it pretty hard. Did quite a bit of research on Fords and went with the 7.3 because it has a pretty good reputation. But in reality, over the last 18 months, this truck's been a real pain in my butt. It's been one thing after another, and as I've researched the quirks that it's had, they seem to be kind of reoccurring. So I've done a lot of time and research kind of fixing some things on this, and I thought maybe I can do some consolidation to help out, pay forward what I've found out on YouTube and Googling some things. So this is just a quick rundown on some Ford quirks that I've found, and hope that might be able to help some other people save some time. I'm not going to really show anything in particular as far as how to fix, but maybe just to problem solve and some shortcuts. The first, when I first got this pickup, I went ahead and did your basics, clean your battery terminals. It has an aftermarket airflow kit on there. I went ahead and redid the glow plugs, and one of the little quirks on there is in the back on your valve cover gaskets. There's a pretty tight space in there. I think it's a 13 millimeter, but I'd strongly suggest that you get some kind of a flexible socket extension there. It's pretty tough to get back into, and once you kind of get back in there with this here, it'll allow you to get both side valve cover bolts off. It's one little trick that I've learned along the way. A couple other little things that I've had some issues with on this truck that seem to be reoccurring with the Fords is some electrical issues. Right off the bat, when I had this, my compass reader, fuel gauge, whatever deal here, didn't work too well, and I found one on eBay there, and I was able to get it about $100, and it works. It's a reoccurring theme. Another thing is your window operating switches here. When I got this truck, these didn't work too well, or at least one or two of them didn't. First thing is make sure that your lock is unlocked, or your window lock is unlocked versus locked. And if things still aren't working very well, this is pretty easy. You just pull off the cover here, and this is in there with a wiring harness, a couple of screws. Again, this could be replaced off of Amazon or eBay for pretty cheap. The turn signal switch, I had to replace this. Take the steering column apart here, some screws, take the dash off. You can just pull it off and get in there. A couple wiring harnesses for your electrical here and for your radio and whatever, and you can kind of set the dash aside and get yourself in there. You can pull this apart. I'm not going to do a video on it. There's plenty of videos to kind of show you, but this pretty easy fix worked after that. Another thing that I have not been able to fix, but it is a reoccurring thing with some of these Fords, is shortly after, right after you start it up, sometimes the radio won't work. You'll have the clock will come on, but if your radio was on playing a radio station, it'll shut off, and then your windows won't work. And my experience with this is that it usually will last for 30 seconds, maybe a minute, and it's always right after you start it. And then once it warms up, or a few minutes there, then it corrects itself and everything works. This is a pretty recurring theme that I've talked to other diesel owners with these Ford owners, and that's a little quirk. I don't know what the solution is to that one, but it's there. Another thing that I've run into with this truck on the interior is this is an automatic, and the automatic shifter here, this will break. It's your steering column shift tube. Now there's a lot of play in this, and obviously my truck is not running right now, and the little gauge is not in park, but it's not a big deal to me. But I literally drove this home from having a little bit of work done here earlier this week, and I went to put the truck in park, and this gear shift just fell, and luckily I was in park. I was able to turn the truck off. But what it is it's the steer column shift tube, and I have the old part here, and I'll kind of let you take a look at what I have there. That's a reoccurring thing with Ford that I've done a little bit of research on. And what it is here is, here's the parts and pieces of kind of what it looks like, and they just sever. And if you look at it, it's almost like a cast aluminum, and you can see the porousness of it there. And my experience with porous metals, whether it's cast iron or cast aluminum, is those porous kind of pockets is it's actually a weaker metal when it comes to temperature and pressure or movement during extreme temperatures. And I've had experience with old Schrader fireplaces that used cast iron, and they would crack along the doors, and I think that the temperature on those fireplaces, it just got so hot, and when you move the doors, it put a lot of pressure on that brittle metal when it was hot. Also, like the Titanic, I believe when they casted the metal on the Titanic, as it was a brittle metal, and when that boat sat in the cold water and then it hit an iceberg, is that jarring, as that metal was so cold, it was brittle, and that's why it broke so much easier. And I think that this is just a design flaw that Ford has kind of come up with, and I don't know if there's some electrolysis or some touching of other metals that has weakened it. But I'm also thinking that this is a cold weather issue, and I'll bet you a lot of people who live in the colder regions is that steering column over time, as it gets cold and you get in and you start trying to mess with it, and it just severs and breaks. So this is your steering column lever, and its parts and pieces. I replaced that. Another issue I've had here, and it just started up this week, was I started having problems with the truck would stall on me, and then when I would go to start it back up, as it would crank, but it wouldn't start. And so I've done a lot of research with the crank won't start or stalls, and there's been a little process of elimination. Now, my first recommendation would be to do a diagnostics. Now, I'm no mechanic. I don't have a diagnostic meter to read anything there, so I kind of try to chip away at a few things. And one of the things that I would start with first is make sure you got your fuel, is your number one thing. The number two thing is that sometimes when a truck gets jarred, if you slam your brakes on, if you've been in a slight accident, or if somebody's hit you, is there's a fuel shutoff switch. It's underneath the passenger side panel or kick panel, and it'll even say here, fuel reset, and there's a little hole in here, and you can just stick your finger in, put it down, and it's kind of a little plunger button. And if you put your finger in there and you push it in and nothing happens, then that means that your reset is okay. If you push your finger in and you push it down, that means that it had been jarred and it needed to be reset. So that would be the first place that I would start. The second place that I would start is that, with some of the research I've done, is there's a bowl heater plug. And the bowl heater plug sits right off the back of your fuel filter casing. And right now I have it tied up. It's this white plug here, and it'll plug in right to the back. It'll plug in right to the back of your fuel filter housing. And what that does is, you need it for cold weather climates, is it helps preheat that. But sometimes that will short out. And I've just disconnected it because I was in the process of doing some problem solving, and I've tied it up so that it doesn't hit something. And I have it tied up still because I was doing some problem solving on this stall cranks won't start issue, and I just haven't plugged it back in. So that's where I would start first. Very, very cheap start point. The next thing that I would do is I would take a look at your CPS, which is your camshaft or your camshaft position sensor. And what this is it sits underneath the truck, and there's videos out there how to replace. I think it's a 10 millimeter, and it's a pretty quick fix. I think this is a $30, $40 part from Ford. I'd recommend getting it from Ford. Don't go cheap on Ford electronics. But pretty easy. Where that is if you hop up underneath your passenger side, slip up underneath your truck here, and if you can find your fan housing, get up on your fan housing, and again, we're underneath the truck on the passenger side up front, and you can see right up here, this is my new one. I've replaced it, and right here. Sorry. There we go. So it's right up here. And what it does is it has a electrical connection, and just pop that off, and then there's just a 10 millimeter, I think, switch in here, or bolt. Pull it out, pull it down, swap it out. That is a pretty reoccurring theme with Fords. And of the stall, that's where I would start. You can find that at a Ford dealership, pretty cheap, pretty easy fix. A lot of people recommend that you probably even put an extra one in your glove box, because it is such a reoccurring theme. So that would be the first major purchase that I would do if you wanted to try to fix your crank won't start. The other thing that I would take a look at, which is also another Ford quirk, is your ICP, or your injector control pressure sensor. And that sits right up behind your alternator here. And it's this little guy right here. Right there. It has this plug coming out of it, and the old ones, if it's a factory Ford, is this the nut is actually lower where it ties into your above your head gasket there, and it would take a crow's foot to get it out. And they've replaced them with that new style where they have the nut is a little bit bigger, and it makes it easier to get to. It has electrical connections inside where your electrical boot fits over the top. And this would be another reoccurring issue with some of these Ford diesels. And usually you can tell that these are failing as you'll get oil residue on this top where your electrical connection comes in. And that's usually a pretty good starting place for problem solving. As you replace the old one, like I said, it's pretty tough to get in there. It's tight. You're going to need a smaller crow's foot. I don't know what size that was. Mine had the updated version, but I went ahead and replaced it because I was getting some oil residue. But in order to swap out your new ones, it's either a 27 millimeter or an 1/16". And I was able to just use an open box wrench, and it'll allow me to kind of get in there. It's a little bit tight, but that would be my recommendation. Make sure that you have the right tools. If you wanted to, you could use a deep well socket, but this fuel line that comes off the bottom of the fuel filter it gets in your way, and it doesn't quite fit on top of there. So I would just suggest that you use a box wrench. That fix there, again, I would get it from Ford. It's a little bit more expensive. It's about $200. And like I said, a lot of the research that I've seen says don't go cheap on those. Get them from Ford. Anything electrical, get them from Ford. As I've been problem solving this, I still have issues with my truck because I'll drive it and it'll die on me. And each time I've tried to problem solve each one of these little things, and the problem still keeps coming back. Some of the other research that I've seen on some of the other sites is for those people who've gotten with the super chip, gold chip, or the it's a your chip your truck, what have you. People will have those installed on their trucks, and almost immediately they'll have stall issues. And so if you have a super chip, gold chip in there, I'd recommend maybe taking that out and seeing if that's the issue. The last thing, I've done all of that, and I still was getting stall issues. And so what I tried to do was just kind of use a little bit of common sense, short of driving the truck off of a cliff. I just tried to think real hard what else it could be. And years ago, I had owned a '69 Ford Bronco, and it did something similar to me. I'd be driving it, and then all of a sudden, it would stall on me, and nothing would work. And I would just wait for a little while, and then eventually it'd start back up, and I could drive it for a little while. On that one it would work for a little bit longer term, whereas this Ford it seems to die. I'll drive it for maybe 5 or 10 minutes, and then it dies. And so I've been trying real hard to drive it around residential areas so that if it dies, I'm not on a busy street. But with that Ford Bronco, what it ended up being was the fuel pump. That fuel pump was wearing out, and it was causing the truck to die or to stall. And so I started to think about what the next option on this diesel is. And even though the research that I found was that fuel pumps don't necessarily act that way, I went ahead and changed it out, and what I have here is, this is a Bosch fuel pump, so it has been replaced already once before. This is the front of the truck, and that'd be the rear. And what it does is it's a frame mounted. It's on the driver's side, right on the driver's side door. And it mounts to the frame. And here it is here. And I replaced this yesterday, hoping that maybe this would be my next solution. And for the last night and then this morning, I've been trying to drive the truck around just the neighborhood where, if it stalled, that I could get it to the side of the road safely and park it and wait and what have you. But in all honesty, I've tried to drive it pretty hard and long, and as of right now, the issue seems to be resolved, and I can't get the truck to stall anymore. So I'm wondering if that was the fuel pump all along. Now, one thing that I'd recommend if you are going to replace a fuel pump, something that I learned kind of the hard way, is I'd strongly recommend a fuel line tool here. And the reason why is because you get underneath there is the front side of the fuel pump is that this little flange it pops up into kind of this slip fitting, and you can't back it back out without opening the flange. And so for $7.99 at the local auto parts store, you just throw this on here, and what it'll do is it'll slip up inside, and it'll allow you to pull the fuel filter out, or the fuel pump out, from the fuel line. Otherwise it's a nightmare, and you're going to ruin the other fitting trying to get screwdrivers in there or what have you. But that's it. I'm hoping that gives you a little bit of an idea of some quirks, some things that I've learned with the Ford 7.3. My suggestion to you in the first place is I wouldn't buy one. A lot of people I talk to that own the 7.3 diesel, they loved them up until about 150,000 miles, and then after that they just tended to be a nickel and dime nightmare. There's no doubt it's a great motor in the sense that it can pull, and I think if it's well taken care of, it'll last quite a while. But I do believe it's a high maintenance diesel motor, and you'll probably be better off to go see if you can find yourself a decent 5.9 Cummins, maybe with a manual transmission somewhere there. But anyways, I'm hoping that this helps with some stall and crank but won't start issues, and maybe save somebody some time. Thanks.